I died on a Tuesday. In the rain. The concrete was cold beneath my back. Blood pooled behind my head, warm at first, then cooling fast. I tasted copper on my teeth. Above me, a woman was laughing. That sound followed me down into the dark. 3 smells stayed with me from that night. Diesel off the Marina water. Sandalwood cologne, sharp as a fist to the chest. And roses. Always roses. The roses were my stepsister. Camille wore that perfume like a uniform. She crouched beside me while I bled and straightened my collar. She wanted me tidy for the police photographs. Then she stood up and checked her lipstick in her phone screen. Adrian watched from 6 feet away, hands in his pockets. My husband. His leather shoes clicked twice on the wet concrete, then stopped. He did not kneel. He did not call for help. He waited the way a man waits for a kettle. She signed everything, Camille said. It's finished. Then so is she, he said. Those were the last words of my first life. 11 months in custody came before that night. One plea hearing I never reached. A stairwell, a shove, rain on my open eyes. But Camille never asked me one question. She never asked what I took from my mother's piano bench. It was the winter I turned 12, and the house still smelled like her. That envelope is the reason Camille sleeps where she sleeps now. I will get to that. I woke up choking on lavender. Not blood. Lavender. Cheap detergent, the kind my mother used on Sundays. My cheek was pressed into a pillowcase I had not owned in years. Gulls were screaming somewhere over Belhaven Harbor. My hands were warm. My hands were not supposed to be anything at all. I lay still and did the only test I trusted. I turned my left wrist toward the window light. In my first life there was a scar there. Thin and white. Adrian broke a wine glass against the counter that night. The skin was smooth. No scar. No mark. Nothing. That was when I understood. The clock on the nightstand said 7:11 in the morning. The date beside it said the 9th of March. 14 months before a stairwell in the rain. 14 months before I learned what my own blood tasted like. I had been given the one thing nobody is ever given. A second draft. I did not cry. I want to be honest about that. I sat up in my mother's old bed. It stood in the narrow back room of a house no longer mine. I felt nothing warm at all. I felt the way a surgeon feels holding a chart. Cold. Interested. Awake. Downstairs, a woman was humming. I knew that hum. Vivienne, my stepmother, hummed when she was pleased with the world. She had hummed at my father's funeral. In the car. On the drive home. She had hummed through the reading of his will. The will was very kind to her. She was humming for a reason. In 11 hours I was supposed to marry Adrian Sinclair. In my first life, I did. I went to the mirror above the dresser. 26 years old. Paint under my fingernails from the nursery greenhouse. Dark circles I would later learn to cover with makeup. Then to cover for other reasons. I looked at that girl for a long moment. She had no idea what a courthouse floor smells like at midnight. Not this time, I said out loud. Then I opened the closet. I started planning a murder that would look like a gift. Camille came in without knocking at 8. She always did. The rose perfume arrived 4 seconds before she did, and my stomach turned over hard. My hands went cold on the dresser. I had to hold the wood until the room stopped tilting. "You're not dressed," she said. "I'm getting there." She sat on my bed and crossed her legs. Camille was beautiful in a way that made people apologize for things. Gold hair, gold bracelets, gold everything. She picked up my green dress and dropped it again like it was damp. "Wear the navy," she said. "The green makes you look like you're trying. Trying is bad now. Trying is bad when it shows, Nora." She smiled. Adrian's mother is old money. Old money smells effort. There it was. The first cut of the day. Delivered before breakfast. Wrapped in help. In my first life I had thanked her for that advice. I had worn the navy dress and felt ugly all night. "You'd know," I said. "You've had a lot of practice smelling him." Camille's smile did not move, but something behind it did. I watched it happen. That was new. In my first life, I never once made her blink. "You're funny this morning," she said. I slept well. She stood and touched my mother's hairbrush on the dresser. Just to touch something of mine. Then she left. The roses stayed another 10 minutes. Sitting in my throat like a coin. I had 4 hours before the dinner. I used them. First, I walked to the storage room at the back of the house. I passed the boiler, ticking like a bad heart. My mother's upright piano was in there under a bedsheet. It had been out of tune since the year she died. Vivian had never sold it, because selling it would have looked cruel to the neighbors. I lifted the bench lid. Dust and old sheet music and mouse droppings. Underneath the folder of Chopin was a brown envelope, soft as cloth. Inside it was the thing my mother left me. I put it in the inside pocket of my coat. It weighed almost nothing. It sat against my ribs all day like a hot stone. You will find out what was in it. Not yet. Second, I walked 6 blocks to a payphone outside the ferry terminal. I did not want a number of mine near this call. The receiver smelled like old plastic and salt. I dialed a number I had memorized in a life that no longer existed. A woman answered on the 4th ring. Okonkwo and Vale. "I'd like to speak with Ruth Okonkwo." "May I say who's calling?" "Tell her a woman is about to hand her the biggest case of her career," I said. "Tell her it's free until it isn't." There was a pause. Then a click. Then a low, dry voice. I had last heard it through prison glass. Telling me she came too late. "This is Ruth," she said. "Miss Okonkwo, my name is Nora Quinn," I said. "I need an hour on Thursday. I'll pay in cash. Cash makes lawyers curious, Miss Quinn." "Good," I said. "Curious is what I'm hiring." I hung up. My hands were shaking. And I let them. Then I bought a coffee I did not want. I stood in the wind until the shaking stopped. Here is what nobody tells you about coming back. The knowledge is not the gift. The time is the gift. In my first life I learned about the offshore accounts 11 months too late. A federal agent told me, in a room with no windows. This time, I would have the bank records before Adrian even knew I was awake. The dinner was at the Sinclair house on Harrow Ridge, above the water. All glass and cold stone. 60 guests. A string quartet playing to nobody. Waiters carrying oysters on crushed ice that smelled like the inside of the sea. Adrian met me at the door. Sandalwood hit me before I saw his face. My chest closed. For 1 full second I was on wet concrete again. My mouth was full of copper. Somebody was laughing. I put my hand on the doorframe and breathed through my teeth. "You're pale," he said. "I'm hungry." He smiled. That was the terrible part. Adrian Sinclair had a smile that made you feel chosen. 34 years old, tall, easy in his own body. He kissed my temple. His lips were dry. I thought about those same hands. One day they would close a car door on my fingers. He would call it an accident. "Everyone's here," he said. Byron brought the partnership papers. And there it was. Right on schedule. Byron Holloway was Adrian's lawyer. He had the wet eyes of a man who stopped arguing with himself. He shook my hand in the study. The room smelled like leather and cigar ash and lemon polish. The folder on the desk was navy blue. 41 pages. I had signed it once already. In another life. With a pen he handed me. "It's a formality," Byron said. "The family likes clean structures." "Clean," I said. "Nora becomes a managing member of Meridian Coast Holdings on the marriage date," he said. "Signature authority. It's a courtesy. It shows trust." In my first life, that sentence cost me 11 months and 1 stairwell. Signature authority means your name sits on every wire transfer. It means when the money is dirty, the ink is yours. It means when the federal task force arrives, they do not need Adrian. They need the person who signed. I turned to page 31. Section 9, subsection 4. Personal guarantee of company obligations. "There's a deadline on this," I said. "Friday, 5 o'clock, Byron said. "The bank wants the structure filed before the marina lease renews. 3 days. My little clock started ticking. and I could almost hear it. May I keep a copy? Byron hesitated. Adrian, from the doorway, said, give her a copy. She's going to be family. So Byron gave me 41 pages of my own execution. I thanked him. I put them in my bag, next to my mother's envelope. 2 documents. One would bury me. One would bury them. Dinner was oysters and cold lamb and a toast I had heard before. Adrian's mother, Marguerite, sat at the head of the table. She looked like furniture nobody was allowed to move. Vivienne laughed too loudly at everything. Camille sat across from Adrian in red silk. She did not look at him once. That is how I knew. Then Adrian stood and tapped his glass. The room went quiet. He said my name. Nora, he said. Come here. I did not move. Nora, he said again, smiling. Don't be shy. 60 faces turned toward me. The quartet had stopped. I could hear ice settling in a bucket. Someone's chair creaked. My own heart went in my ears. I stood up slowly and set my napkin on the table. I can't marry you, I said. You could hear the harbor through the glass. That is how quiet it went. Vivienne made a small sound, like a bird hitting a window. Marguerite Sinclair set down her fork with great care. Adrian's smile stayed exactly where it was. That told me more than any document in that house. Nora, Adrian said quietly. Sit down. I'm not the right person for this family, I said. I work in a greenhouse. I have dirt under my fingernails. You need someone who understands what all this is worth. I let my eyes move down the table. 1 second. That was all it took. Camille was already leaning forward. I'm sorry, I said. Truly. I hope you find someone who deserves it. Then I walked out through 60 people. Past the oysters, the quartet, the cold stone, into the wind. Behind me I heard Vivienne hissing my name. I heard glass. And under it all, faint and horrible, I heard Camille laughing. The same laugh from the loading dock, 14 months early. I stood at the bottom of the drive. I let the rain start on my face. You want to know if I hesitated? I did. Not for Adrian. For the girl I used to be. She wanted so badly to be chosen by a beautiful house. I stood there and I let her go. Then I walked to the bus stop, because I no longer had a ride home. Camille came to my room at midnight. She had been drinking. The roses were sour and warm around her. Her mascara was perfect. That meant she had checked it before knocking. That was a scene, she said. It was. He's humiliated. He'll live. She sat down on my bed again, in my room. My father had left that house to her mother. She looked at the ceiling and smiled at it. He asked about you, she said. Then he asked about me. Did he? He said the deal still has to close by Friday. She turned her head. He said the family needs a name on the papers. There it was. Greed makes people explain themselves out loud. I sat very still and let her do it. Then you should sign them, I said. Camille laughed. Don't be bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm tired. I looked her straight in the eye. You've wanted him since March. Take him. Take the house. Take the boat. Take the name. I don't want any of it. She waited for the trap. I watched her look for it. That is the thing about people like Camille. They can smell a lie. But they cannot smell a truth they want to hear. You mean that? She said slowly. I mean it more than I've ever meant anything. Which was true. Every word. That is why it worked. She stood, and at the door she could not help herself. She never could. You were always going to lose him, Nora, she said. You just made it faster. Probably, I said. Good night. Camille. She left. I sat in the dark and listened to her heels on the stairs. That sound used to mean danger. It still did. It just pointed the other way now. There is one more thing I did that night. I want to be careful how I say it. I took out my phone and photographed every page of the partnership agreement. All 41. The flash lit the room like small lightning. Then I emailed the file to an address that was not mine. No subject line. No text. Then I deleted the sent message. Then I deleted the photos. That is all. One email at 1 in the morning, from a girl with dirt under her fingernails. Nobody would think about it again for 7 months. Then, at 9 minutes past 1, I opened my closet and took down a shoebox. Inside were $42 and a nursery paycheck. There was also a key to an apartment I had not rented yet. I had rented it in my first life. After everything. When I had nothing. This time I would rent it while I still had a choice. I lay down. I did not sleep. I listened to the boiler tick and thought about wet concrete. Somewhere across town, in a house of glass. My stepsister was writing. Her own name. On page 41. She thought she was signing a marriage. She was signing a confession, 14 months early. The engagement was announced 11 days later. Camille wore white to her own party, which tells you everything. I saw the photographs in the harbor paper. Adrian's hand on her waist. My mother's old town squinting into a camera flash. The caption called them a Belhaven love story. Somebody had gotten to the editor. I knew exactly who. I had watched Byron Holloway do it for a different bride. I read the article standing in the greenhouse. My boots were wet. The sprinklers hissed. Then I folded it and used it to line a seed tray. You all right? Bern Hollis asked. Bern owned the nursery. 71 years old. Hands like tree bark, deaf in his left ear. He had hired me at 19 and never once asked about my family. I'm better than I've been in years, I said. That's a strange thing to say with that face. It's a strange year. He grunted and went back to the orchids. I liked that about Bern. He let a sentence lie where it fell. Here is what my new life smelled like. Wet peat and tomato leaf. Diesel from the delivery truck. Coffee in a chipped blue mug at Rosa's diner, 2 blocks from the water. Bleach on Sunday mornings, when I mopped my own floor. 41 square meters above a laundromat. Here is what it did not smell like. Sandalwood. Roses. Lemon polish in a study. I moved in on a Saturday with 2 suitcases and a plant. Rosa Alvarez helped me carry the mattress up because her nephew had a truck. She was 60, wide, loud. She had fed me for free during a bad month. In a life she did not remember. This is a shoebox, Rosa said, breathing hard. It's my shoebox. You had a mansion 3 weeks ago. I had a room in a house where nobody locked their door, I said. That isn't the same thing. Rosa looked at me for a moment too long. Then she opened the window and the harbor wind came in. She said the apartment had good light. It did. That was why I chose it. The sun came through that window every afternoon at 4. It fell across the floorboards in a warm yellow bar. I used to sit in it with my back against the wall. Eyes closed. Warm light on my face meant I was still here. It is a small thing. It kept me sane. Now let me tell you what Camille was doing while I sat in the sun. She was winning. She was winning very loudly. She posted the ring 3 times in 1 week. She posted the boat. She posted a video of Adrian's mother's dining room. 30 seconds long, panning slowly across the silver. 14,000 people watched my stepsister walk through that house. The house where my effort had smelled cheap. She came to the nursery in April to make sure I had seen it. I heard her heels on the concrete before I saw her. My hands stopped moving in the soil. Some things do not leave you. She stood between the ferns and cream wool with sunglasses pushed into her hair. So this is where you are, she said. This is where I am. God, it's humid. She looked at my knees. You're kneeling in dirt, Nora. That's the job. Camille laughed. And it echoed off the plastic roof. I put my trowel down. My hand might have done something interesting. I wanted to invite you, she said, to the wedding. In August. Vivienne thought it would be cruel. But I said, no, Nora's strong. I'm strong. You'd have to sit in the back, she said. Adrian's people take the front rows. You understand. I understand. She waited for me to break. When I did not, she took off her sunglasses to try harder. He talks about you sometimes, she said softly. He says you were sweet. He says sweet gets boring. The rose perfume came off her in waves. My mouth went dry and coppery. For half a second I was on the concrete again with rain in my eyes. Camille, I said. Did you sign the partnership papers? She blinked. What? Meridian Coast. The managing member documents. Did you sign them? Of course I signed them, she said. In March. Why? No reason, I said. Congratulations. She left with her heels ringing on the concrete. I knelt back down in the dirt. I put my hands in it until they stopped shaking. Then I smiled. And I am not proud of the shape of that smile. She had signed in March. Which meant she had been a managing member for 6 weeks already. Which meant every wire transfer since had her name attached to it. The trap did not need me anymore. It just needed time. But I was never going to sit and wait. That is the difference between this life and the last one. Ruth Okonkwo's office was on the 4th floor of a brick building. The elevator was broken. Her waiting room smelled like old leather and hot dust from a radiator. A clock on the wall ticked 1 second behind my pulse. The light was yellow and low, and it made everything look like an old photograph. She was 50 and small. She looked at me the way a customs officer looks at a suitcase. You said you'd pay in cash, she said. I put $400 on her desk. It was almost everything I had. That's a retainer, I said. I need you to open a file and never close it. On whom? Meridian Coast Holdings, I said. And the Sinclair family. And a marina lease that renews every March. The same amount every year, in cash. From a shipping company that owns no ships. Ruth's pen stopped moving. How do you know that? She said. I read. I said. Miss Quinn, that is not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today, I said. Ask me again in a year. She sat back. The chair leather creaked. Outside a gull went over the window and the light flickered. You understand what you're describing, she said. If it's true, I understand exactly what I'm describing. Then you also understand people who move money that way do not send letters, Ruth said. They send men. I know what they send, I said. I've met one. Ruth Okonkwo looked at me for a long moment. Something in her face changed, the way a door changes when it unlocks. Fine, she said. Rules. You don't record anyone illegally. You don't break into anything. You don't touch a document you don't already have a legal right to touch. She pointed her pen at me. If you do, I stop being your lawyer and start being a witness. Agreed. And you tell me the truth, always, even when it makes you look bad. I killed a woman, I said. Slowly, on purpose. And she isn't dead yet. Ruth's pen came up. Excuse me. Metaphor, I said. Mostly. I walked home along the water that evening. The light was going orange over the cranes. The air smelled like salt and fried onions from roses. I bought a coffee I could not afford and drank it on the seawall. That was the day I noticed the gray suit. He was standing near the ferry ticket window with a paper cup, not drinking it. 50s. Thin. Bad shoes for a man in a good jacket. He looked at the water. Then he looked at me. Then at the water again. I knew his face. I had seen it under fluorescent light. Across a metal table. 11 months into my first death. He had slid a photograph toward me and asked if I recognized the shipping manifest. He had been polite. He had also been the reason I was in the room. His name was Elias Marsh. I finished my coffee. I did not approach him. Not yet. There is a right week for everything. And this was not it. But I want you to remember him. In about 4 months he will knock on my door in the rain. And I am going to be the one who opens it smiling. In May, I gave my stepsister a wedding present. I want to be precise about this, because later people will say I tricked her. I did not. I handed her a folder in front of witnesses. I told her to have it examined. The lunch was Vivienne's idea. Family healing, she called it. We met at the yacht club. The carpet there smells like gin and old money. The windows look out on boats, nobody sails. Camille wore pearls. Adrian did not come. That was the first interesting thing. You look thin, Vivienne said to me, meaning poor. I've been working. At the plant place. At the plant place. Camille pushed her salad around and checked her phone 11 times in 20 minutes. There was a shadow under her left eye that her foundation had not quite covered. It was the color of an old plum. I have worn that exact shade myself, in another life, under better makeup than hers. I did not feel sorry for her. I want you to understand that. I looked at that bruise the way you look at a weather report. I brought something, I said. I put the folder on the table. Camille opened it, and her whole face changed. Is this the deed? Harrow Point, I said. 40 acres on the North Spit. My mother left it to me. I'm signing it over to you both, as a wedding gift. Vivienne's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Camille's mouth actually opened. Waterfront land in Belhaven had tripled in 8 years. Adrian's marina expansion needed a north anchor, and everybody at that table knew it. Nora, Vivienne said carefully. That land is worth a great deal. I know what it's worth, I said. Why? Camille said. She was suspicious. Good. Suspicion that gets talked out of itself is stronger than trust. Because I'm never going to develop it, I said. I'll never have the money. It just sits there costing me taxes I can't pay. I shrugged. You'll build something. Mom would rather see it used. You should have it appraised, I added. Get a lawyer. Get a surveyor. Don't take my word for anything. That last part was the kindest thing I have ever done, and the cruelest. I offered her the door out. Twice more, over the next month, I offered it again in writing. She never opened it. She never ordered a survey. A survey costs $3,000 and takes 6 weeks. Camille was in a hurry to own something my mother had touched. She signed the acceptance in June. Adrian countersigned as co-grantee because he wanted the parcel in the marina package. Byron Holloway notarized it. 3 signatures. 2 lawyers in the room. And not one soil sample. I went home that night and sat in my yellow bar of 4 o'clock sun. My hands smelled like peat. I thought about my mother teaching me scales. That piano no longer had a home. It's done, Mom, I said to nobody. Then I started on the paperwork. Here is what evidence warfare actually looks like. It is not exciting. It is a woman in a public records office on her lunch break. She feeds coins into a copy machine. The county recorder's office was in the basement of the courthouse. It smelled like toner and wet stone. The fluorescent lights buzzed at a pitch that got into your teeth. I went every Tuesday for 11 weeks. Everything I took was public. It had leased marina berths in Belhaven for 9 years. In that whole time, it registered 2 boats. 2 boats. 9 years. $400,000 a year in slip fees, paid in advance, in cash. The clerk stopped asking for my name after the 4th week. She started leaving the good copier on for me. The paper came out warm. That is the detail I remember. Thick warm paper stacking up in my arms, smelling of hot ink. Above me, the courthouse pipes knocked in the walls. I carried it to Ruth in a grocery bag. She spread it across her desk and did not speak for 11 minutes. This is a lot of nothing, she said at last. Individually. And together? Ruth took off her glasses. Together it's a map. In July, I did the second thing. My mother's estate account had never been closed. $18,000 sat in it. I was the surviving trustee. Vivienne had been drawing on it for 9 years. She called it household maintenance. In my first life, I never looked. I was too polite to look. I walked into the bank on a Thursday. I brought my mother's death certificate and my identification. It took 40 minutes. The teller had a small silver cross and a nervous cough. I moved every dollar into a new account in my name only. I closed the old one. Then I asked for a printed statement of 9 years of withdrawals. 22 pages. I read them at Rosa's counter with a chipped blue mug in my hand. Vivienne had taken 11,000 for a car, 6 for Camille's teeth, 2 for a cruise. It was all there, dated, itemized, in a bank's own typeface. You look like you found gold, Rosa said. Better, I said. I found bookkeeping. Vivienne called me 16 times that night. I let it ring. The 17th time I picked up. You closed the account, she said. I closed the account. That is family money. That is my mother's money, I said. Which you spent on a Buick. Her voice went up into a register I had heard once before. In a courtroom. The day she testified that I had always been unstable. You ungrateful little animal. After everything this family gave you, send me an itemized invoice, I said. I'll consider it. Then I hung up. I sat in the dark. My heart was going hard. Not fear. Something else. It felt like the first cold air of autumn. Their answer came 11 days later, and it was worse than I expected. 2 police officers came to the nursery on a Saturday afternoon. Byrne was watering the shade beds. 4 customers were browsing. The sprinklers were hissing. The light through the plastic roof was green and soft. A young officer with a shaving cut asked me to step outside. Camille had reported the Sinclair engagement ring stolen. Not lost. Stolen. She had given a statement. She said I took it from her handbag at the yacht club lunch. She had named me. She had used the word disturbed. I stood in the parking lot with dirt on my knees. An officer wrote down my name. Customers watched through the glass. A woman I had sold hydrangeas to in March turned her cart around. She left it in the aisle. That is what humiliation smells like. Wet peat and exhaust and your own sweat going cold. They did not arrest me. There was nothing to arrest me for. The ring, it turned out later, was in a safe deposit box. Camille had rented it in April. But on Monday, Byrne got a letter. The nursery leased its 4 acres from a holding company. The holding company had been quietly bought in February by Meridian Coast. The letter gave Byrne Hollis 90 days to vacate. His father had cleared that land in 1951. He read it twice at the potting bench. Then he folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. He went back to the orchids. Byrne, I said. Don't. He said. This is because of me. I know. He said. Get the hose. I went out behind the greenhouse. I put my fist against the cinder block wall. I held it there. Rose perfume. Sandalwood. A laugh over wet concrete. All of it. At once, in daylight. Then I went inside and got the hose. That night I wrote 1 letter by hand. I mailed it to an address in Lisbon. I had found her in April. A shipping registry, a hospital discharge notice, 1 expensive phone call. Delphine Arsenault. Adrian's first fiancé, the one the family said had moved abroad for her health. Her health. That was the word they used. She wrote back in 12 days. The envelope was thin. Inside was 1 sheet of paper. And on it, in careful handwriting, were 4 words. I have the photographs. Elias Marsh knocked on my door on the 11th of August. 9 at night, in the rain. I had been waiting 4 months. I opened the door with a dish towel in my hand. I smiled at him. I watched that smile bother him. Miss Quinn, he said. You know who I am. You're the man in the gray suit from the ferry terminal, I said. Come in. Take your shoes off, the floor's clean. He came in. He looked at my 41 square meters, my 2 chairs, my 1 plant. Rain ran off his sleeve onto the linoleum. He smelled like wet wool and cheap coffee. I'm with the Treasury Financial Crimes Division, he said. I'd like to ask you about Meridian Coast Holdings. Sit down, I said. Do you take sugar? He sat. He did not take sugar. He put a folder on my table and did not open it. In March, he said, somebody emailed our public tip address 41 photographs. A partnership agreement. No name, no message, no return address that goes anywhere real. That sounds useful. It was extremely useful, Marsh said. It let us subpoena a bank in March instead of next year. He looked at me. The photographs were taken on a bed. You can see a floral quilt in two of the corners. I did not look at my bed. That is the sort of thing amateurs do. Am I a suspect? I asked. You were, for about 6 weeks, he said. Your name is not on a single document after the 9th of March. Your stepsister's name is on 206. There it is. That is the whole story in one sentence. If you take nothing else from this, take that. I want to be clear about something, I said. I will answer every question you ask me. My lawyer's name is Ruth Okonkwo. And you'll call her first. Why? Marsh said. Why help us? I thought about how to answer that. There was no version of the truth he would believe. Because in another life I sat across a metal table from you, I said. And you slid a shipping manifest at me. And you asked if I recognized it. And I did not. I had signed 206 documents without reading one. Marsh looked at me for a long time. The radiator ticked. Rain moved on the window. That's a strange thing to say, he said. It's a strange year, I said. How long do they have? He hesitated. Then he decided something. The marina lease renews on the 4th of September, he said. There will be a lot of activity before then. Do not be near that marina in the last week of August. I have a wedding to attend on the 30th, I said. I know, Marsh said. Sit in the back. I always do. The letters started arriving the following week. I know the dates because Ruth got copies of everything. Also because Vivian screamed most of them at me over the phone. On the 14th, the State Environmental Agency sent a certified notice. It went to the current owners of record of Harrow Point. 40 acres. Formerly, the Belhaven Creosote and Boat Works, closed in 1968, never remediated. Creosote. Arsenic. Lead in the fill dirt where the old dip tanks stood. My mother knew. Her father knew. That is why the land sat there for 50 years. The rest of the waterfront tripled in value. The cleanup estimate was $4.2 million. The notice named the responsible parties. Camille Rourke. Adrian Sinclair. Meridian Coast Holdings. Not me. My name had come off that deed in June. In front of 2 lawyers and a notary. Exactly as she wanted. Camille called me at 2 in the morning. She was drunk. I could hear ice in a glass and music somewhere behind her. She did not say hello. What did you know? She said. About what? The land. The land, Nora. The land. Her voice cracked in the middle of the word. There's a lien. There's a lien on it. They're saying we owe $4 million for dirt. I told you to get a survey, I said. Silence. Ice moving. You told me to get a survey, she repeated slowly. Twice in writing. Ruth has the letters. You knew. I knew my mother never sold it, I said. I knew it cost me $1,100 a year in taxes. Nobody would touch that land. And I told you to have it examined, Camille. You were in a hurry. She started crying. It was ugly and wet and real. I listened to all of it. I felt the way you feel watching weather through a window. Adrian is going to kill me, she whispered. That landed differently. I closed my eyes. Camille, I said. Is there a bruise under your left eye right now? The line went quiet. Then it went dead. I want to tell you I felt nothing. I have been honest with you so far, so I will not lie now. I sat on my kitchen floor for an hour with the phone in my hand. Then I got up and called Ruth and told her to file everything on Monday. Because here is the thing nobody understands about mercy. I offered Camille the survey. I offered it 3 times. She looked at 40 acres of waterfront and heard the word gift. No power on this earth could make her hear the rest. The dominoes went down in 9 days. I will give them to you in order, because the order is the beautiful part. On the 18th, the bank pulled the marina expansion loan. The North Spit parcel was the primary collateral. Contaminated land is not collateral. It is a hole with paperwork. On the 19th, Byron Holloway withdrew as counsel for Meridian Coast. He cited a conflict. Ruth told me later what that means. It means a lawyer has seen something he cannot unsee. On the 20th, Adriatic Freight did not pay its September slip fees. 9 years of cash in advance, and suddenly nothing. Somebody had been warned. Somebody always is. On the 21st, 2 of the marina's 3 tenant charters cancelled. On the 22nd, Adrian's mother moved the Harrow Ridge house into a trust. Her son was not in it. Marguerite Sinclair had survived 1 husband and 2 markets. She could smell a fire through stone. On the 23rd, my stepmother came to my apartment. Vivienne climbed 2 flights of stairs in heels. She stood in my doorway with her coat wrong on her shoulders. She had aged 9 years in 5 months. Her lipstick was on her teeth. "You have to help her," she said. "Come in. She's my daughter, Nora." "I know," I said. "Sit down. There's tea." She sat in my second chair, in my shoebox, under my window. The 4 o'clock sun was gone. It was evening and the light was gray. "Call the environmental people," she said. "Tell them it was yours. Tell them you didn't disclose." "I did disclose," I said. "In writing. 3 times. Then take it back." She was gripping her own hands. "Take the land back. Take the boy back. Take all of it. And let her walk away." I looked at the woman who spent my mother's money on a Buick. Who testified in a courtroom that I had always been unstable. Who hummed on the drive home from my father's funeral. "Vivienne," I said. "Do you remember what you told me the week Mom died?" She did not answer. "You told me the house wasn't mine anymore," I said. "And you were right. So this isn't mine either." She signed it. She owns it. That's what owning means. Vivienne stood up and knocked the tea over. It ran across my clean floor. "You are your mother," she hissed. Cold, all the way down. "Thank you," I said. She left. I mopped the floor. Bleach and lemon. It took 4 minutes. Then I sat down and started writing what I would say at the wedding. Ruth filed on Monday the 25th. 3 actions in 1 morning. A civil complaint for defamation. It was over a false police report about a ring. A petition to void the deed transfer for failure to obtain an appraisal. We did not expect to win it. It forced every appraisal document into the public file. And a demand letter to Meridian Coast on behalf of Bern Hollis. His lease died 11 days after his tenant declined to be bullied. Then she released a statement. 4 paragraphs. No adjectives. Ruth Okonkwo does not need adjectives. The Harbor paper ran it on Tuesday, page 2. On Wednesday, they ran page 1. Because on Tuesday night, a woman in Lisbon sent them 11 photographs. Delphine Arsenault had been engaged to Adrian Sinclair 6 years before me. She left Belhaven in a hurry. The family said it was her health, and technically that was true. The photographs were dated. They showed a hospital corridor, a chart, a wrist. And a face I would not describe to you. There was a discharge summary. There was a sworn statement, notarized in Portugal. She had signed a settlement in exchange for silence. The settlement had an expiry clause. 6 years. Byron Holloway had drafted it. It had expired in March. The same month I refused a man in front of 60 people. You may think that was a coincidence. It was not, and I will come back to it. The wedding went ahead on the 30th. I want you to sit with that for a second. Their world was on fire. They held the wedding anyway. Canceling would have looked like an admission. That is the whole disease in one decision. These people would rather burn than be seen putting out a fire. I went. I wore the green dress. The church smelled of lilies and hot wax and too many bodies. Half the pews were empty. 60 invitations had gone out in June. Maybe 30 people came. Most of them came the way people come to a car accident. I sat in the back row. Marsh had told me to. I would have anyway. Camille came down the aisle in $11,000 of French lace. Her hair was perfect. Her hands were shaking so badly the bouquet was moving. And here is the detail I have carried ever since. When she passed my row, I did not smell roses. 9 years of that perfume. 9 years of it arriving 4 seconds before she did. 9 years of it sitting in my throat. That day she smelled like hairspray and hospital soap and nothing else at all. She had stopped wearing it. I do not know why. I have a guess. Perfume is what you wear when you believe someone is looking at you. She saw me. Her step broke for half a beat. Then she kept walking, because there was nowhere else to walk. Adrian looked wonderful. That is the thing about men like Adrian. The bill comes due, and their jaw is still perfect. He said his vows in a clear, warm voice. I sat in the back and remembered his shoes, clicking twice on wet concrete. Sandalwood reached me even in the last row. My mouth went coppery. I put my hand flat on the pew and breathed. I stayed exactly where I was. They were married at 11:40. The reception was at the yacht club at 1. The agents came at 2:15. There were 4 of them. They were very quiet about it, which was somehow worse. No shouting. No drawn weapons. 2 came through the terrace doors, 2 through the kitchen. A hush moved across that room like a draft. Marsh was not among them. He came in last, hands in his pockets. There was still rain on his shoulders from the parking lot. The string quartet stopped in the middle of a phrase. That is the sound I remember. 4 instruments quitting one after another, 3 seconds apart. A woman in a blue jacket said Adrian's full legal name. She said the words wire fraud, and money laundering, and structuring. She said them at conversational volume, at a wedding, over a plate of untouched salmon. Adrian did not fight. He set his glass down. He buttoned his jacket. He said one sentence to his new wife. Say nothing, he said. You signed everything. Then he walked out between 2 agents, past the ice sculpture, into the rain. The room stayed frozen for maybe 6 seconds. Then it broke. Chairs. Voices. A woman crying who had never met either of them. Vivienne on her feet, screaming something about lawyers. Marguerite Sinclair walking to the coat check without a word. She had known since the 22nd. Camille stood alone in the middle of it in her French lace. A young man in a gray raincoat crossed the floor. He asked if she was Camille Rourke Sinclair. She said yes. He handed her a manila envelope and left. She opened it right there, standing up, with her veil still pinned. Environmental Enforcement Order. $4.2 million. Responsible party. Her name typed in a small clean font, twice. Her makeup went first. It always does. The mascara ran into the foundation. The foundation had been packed thick over her left cheekbone. It came away in streaks. Everyone in that room saw the plum-colored shadow underneath. Nobody said anything about the bruise. Not one of them. She looked up and found me in the back of the room. Of course she did. I stood up. I walked to her through the wreckage of her own wedding. Past the salmon, the ice, the abandoned instruments. My boots were still cracked. My dress was green. My hands still had soil in the creases. I had not scrubbed it out. That is what my hands are. We stood face to face for the first time in 6 months. You did this, she said. No, I said. You signed it. The land. Her voice was a rag. The land was poison. You gave it to me at lunch. With a fork in your hand. I told you to survey it. You knew what I would do. Yes, I said. That was the first time I admitted it out loud. I watched it go into her like cold water. How long, she whispered. How long what? How long have you known? Any of it. All of it. She grabbed my wrist. Her nails were bitten to nothing. Since May? Since March? I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked back up. Since the 9th of March, I said. At 7:11 in the morning. She did not understand. She could not. She stood there in $11,000 of lace. The room was full of people already leaving. She tried to make that date mean something. It would not. That's the day you left him, she said. That's the day I gave him to you, I said. There's a difference. I've been very careful about the difference all year. Her hand fell off my wrist. Behind her. Through the terrace doors. I could see the marina. Blue lights on the water. Small figures carrying boxes off a boat that had never gone anywhere in 9 years. Camille, I said. There's one more thing you should know. And that is when I took the envelope out of my coat. The envelope was brown and soft as cloth. It had been in my coat since the 9th of March. Before that it sat in my mother's piano bench for 14 years. Under a folder of Chopin. I took it out 3 weeks after her funeral, when I was 12. I wanted something of hers that Vivienne could not sell. I did not read it until I was 22. I did not understand it until I was 26 and dead. Open it, I said. Camille's hands were shaking too hard. She got it open anyway. Because people always do. There were 2 pages inside. The first was a site survey from 1968. Belhaven Creosote and Boatworks. 40 acres, North Spit. A hand-drawn map with 4 rectangles marked as dip tanks. A typed paragraph about soil saturation. A stamp from a state office that no longer exists. That's the survey, Camille said. That's the survey you told me to get. That's the survey that already existed, I said. It was never filed with the county. There's only 1 copy. My grandfather kept it. My mother kept it. Now you're holding it. Why are you giving me this? She said. Read the second page. She turned it over. The second page was a letter, typed on personal stationery. It was dated the 4th of June, 1994. It was addressed to my mother. It offered $31,000 for the North Spit parcel, cash, no inspection, no conditions. It was signed by Vivienne Rourke. I watched my stepsister's face while she read the 3rd paragraph. That is the paragraph where the buyer explains why the price is fair. That is the paragraph where the buyer writes about the dip tank contamination. In her own words, she notes how hard such a property is to sell honestly. The room had gone quiet again. Not all of it. Just the part of it around us. Camille looked up. Her mother was 11 feet away. Holding her own coat, standing very still. Mum. Camille said. Vivienne did not move. Mom, you knew. Camille. You knew about the land. Camille's voice went up and cracked in the middle. You knew in 1994. You sat at that lunch in May. You watched me sign it. I thought that survey was gone, Vivienne said. That is what she said. Not I did not know. Not you are wrong. She said she thought the paper was gone. In front of 11 remaining guests and a federal agent in a wet coat. I have replayed that moment more times than I should admit. It is the only part of that year I enjoyed. I am not proud of the way I enjoyed it. Camille turned back to me. Something in her had come loose. You could have shown me this in May, she said. Yes. You could have shown me at the lunch. Before I signed. Yes, I said. And you would have called me a liar and signed anyway. Because it came from me. She opened her mouth and closed it. She knew it was true. I let the silence do the arguing. Camille, I said. Do you want to know the part nobody has told you? No. Delphine Arsenault signed a settlement 6 years ago, I said. It bought her silence. It had an expiry clause. 6 years to the month. Camille stared at me. It expired in March, I said. The same week I walked out of that engagement dinner. That's a coincidence. It's a calendar, I said. I waited for it. Then I handed him to you on a Tuesday night. In my bedroom. You told me I was always going to lose him. Her legs went. Not dramatically. She simply sat down on a chair that happened to be behind her. In her wedding dress. Holding 2 pieces of paper. Please, she said. And there it was. The word I had waited 14 months and 1 whole death to hear. Please what? I said. Fix it. She was crying properly now. Without any of the technique she used on other people. Take the land back. Tell them you gave it to me. Tell them I didn't understand. You didn't understand, I agreed. That's not the same as innocent. I'm your sister. You're my stepsister, I said. And in 11 days, you'll be something else. The woman who reported a ring stolen from her own safe deposit box. They'll put me in a room, she whispered. They'll put me in a room with a table and a light. They'll ask me about wires I never saw. I looked at her for a long moment. Yes, I said. They will. It smells like floor wax and old coffee. Take the deal they offer you on the second day. Not the first. The second. She looked up, ruined, uncomprehending. How do you know what it smells like? She said. I did not answer that. I have never answered it. I could have told her the truth right there. In front of the salmon and the melting ice. I could have said that I already sat in that room. In a life she never had to live. Wearing a bruise she has not earned yet. But some things you do not hand to people. Some things they have to buy. Camille, I said. I'm not going to forgive you. I want to be clear, because in 6 months you'll tell people I did. Then what do you want? She said. Nothing. I said. That's the part you'll never understand. I don't want anything from you. I stopped in March. I put my hand out. She flinched. I took the 2 pages out of her fingers, gently. The way you take scissors from a child. These are copies, I said. Ruth has the originals. So does the state. Then I turned around and walked out of the yacht club. Nobody followed me. Marsh held the door. He did not say anything, and I did not either. That was the correct amount of conversation. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like wet asphalt and salt, and, faintly, someone's cigarette. Blue lights were still turning on the water down at the marina. I walked the whole way home in a green dress and cracked boots. It took 50 minutes. I did not hurry. Here is what happened after, briefly, because endings should be short. Adrian took 11 years. He is appealing. He will keep appealing. Men like Adrian believe the world contains a door they have not tried. Camille cooperated on the second day. She got probation and 400 hours. Also a judgment she will be paying until she is 60. The environmental order followed her through the divorce. Liability is not romantic. It does not care who left whom. She works in a call center in Marlow now. She sold the ring. Vivienne was never charged with anything. There is no law against a letter from 1994. She lives alone in the house my father left her. Her daughter does not call. I think that is a sentence of a kind. Byrne Hollis kept the nursery. The holding company sold the 4 acres in the bankruptcy for very little. Contaminated land next door makes buyers nervous. My defamation settlement was $31,000. That is a funny number, if you have been paying attention. I gave all of it to Byrne for the deposit. He argued for 2 days and then he took it. Delphine writes to me every few months. Her handwriting is beautiful. She has a dog now. I did not get rich. I want to say that plainly. These stories usually end with a woman in a good coat. I got a nursery job and a shoebox apartment. A lawyer who takes me to lunch twice a year. A floor I mop myself. That is the whole prize. I would not trade 1 square meter of it. It is March again as I tell you this. The 9th. 7:11 in the morning. I am sitting on the back step of the greenhouse. Coffee in a chipped blue mug. There is soil under my fingernails and it is not coming out. The gulls are going over the harbor, complaining about everything, the way they do. The sun has just come around the corner of the shade beds. It is lying across my hands in a warm yellow bar. That is the thing I came back for. Not the revenge. This. Warm light on my hands, and nobody's shoes clicking behind me on wet concrete. There is 1 more page in that envelope. I never showed it to Camille. It is in my mother's handwriting. On the back of the survey. She wrote it the year she got sick. 9 words. Never sell the point. Give it to someone who deserves it. I read that line when I was 12 and thought it was about kindness. I read it again at 26, on a bathroom floor. There was a fresh scar on my wrist. I understood that my mother had a very cold sense of humor. I am her daughter all the way down. So, that is the story of how I gave my stepsister everything she ever wanted. If you were me, would you have saved her, or walked away? Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from?